Welcome to the studio at That Nerd Show and Film Fans Media. I am Marcus Blake, and we are speaking with the director and the star of Don't Turn Your Back on Friday Night Light, a musical documentary about the iconic Ike Reilly. And I'm speaking with director Mike Schmiedeler and Ike Reilly, and it's a pleasure to have you both joining us today.
Glad to be here, Marcus.
All right. So I just want to start off by saying the thing. I think I had more fun this weekend rediscovering your music, Ike, than anything else. It had been a while since I had listened to it, and which was funny because I was spending the night with the girlfriend on Saturday, and we like to do music, and I had to take a break from doing Taylor Swift duets with her, and I was kind of messing around with some of your music, and she's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Well, it's like Riley, but we're doing Taylor Swift." Yeah, but this is better. So anyway, I want to start off with this. Doing a film, I feel like it's kind of about time that a documentary was done about you, Ike. And for Mike, how did you come to this project? What's the inspiration for this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I met Ike in 2013. My co-director, co-writer, and editor. I'm the producer, co-director, and co-editor, Michael O'Brien, who I'd worked with a lot, phenomenal editor. We'd worked on a bunch of docs and other content series together. And he's like, you got to come check this guy out. You're gonna love him. Go see him play at Shuba's, and the Ike Reilly assassination, his band just blew the doors off. I'm like, these guys are phenomenal. How are they not
Yeah,
everywhere? How are they not huge? And I mean, I remember I just heard, a job like that. And I remember just in the room, like the lyrics to that. And it was like, after the fact, O'Brien's like, yeah, he was a doorman. He wrote that. Like, I'm like, oh, it's interesting. It's written from the perspective. He's like, yeah, that's him. He's that guy. And it just stuck with me. And I became a fan, started going to shows. If you watch the film, you'll see there's a bunch of home shows. I was at a bunch of those home shows. And I
yeah.
was at a place here in Chicago, Fitzgerald's, in the Christmas of 2018. And while I'm sitting there watching the show, I'm just thinking to myself, it's been 5 years and I'm still saying the same thing. This guy should be huge. Why is he
Yeah.
not huge? And so as I do, because that's what my job is, I wrote up a pitch for a film, and I'm like, here's the film. And I knew from O'Brien has edited a bunch of Ike's music videos. And so I knew the extent of archive that existed, and it's a lot. I mean, he always had cameras around, which was dynamite. So I knew there was a ton of good archive. And so I wrote this pitch and shared it with Ike. And I'm like, I would love to do this film. And he was kind of like, I don't know if I'm that interesting. I'm like, you're the most interesting human I know. And not just beyond, his music, but his life story is super
Yeah.
fascinating. His family is amazing. I always tell him, you kind of exist in two worlds where, like, you've got this amazing family, yet you also are a rock star, and people would kill for one of the two, and you got both.
Yeah.
And I knew in the film I wanted to include his family because they're such a big part of who he is. And so yeah, it took me like 9 months to wear him down, but I did. And then I joked that the hard part in film is getting the money. Well, the hard part was getting Ike to say, okay, fine. And I think once he realized, like, if this is good for the band, I'm in. And then I found some similar fans of his who had means, and they loved the idea, and they were all in with me. And so we got started right when COVID hit, and that was kind of a blessing and a curse because it slowed us down, but it gave
Right.
O'Brien the chance to go through all this archive, and we had a ton. And it's all color coded, in this binder, real old school. So he was able to really organize the archive well. And then we shot in 2021, edited in 2022, and then we did well on the festivals. In 2023, we won in about 7 different festivals. So that was great.
Speaking of the pandemic, I love how you kind of showed getting into live streaming, Ike, and showing what you and your family were doing. Do you feel like that was kind of like preseason, a way to get into being a part of a film, so to speak?
Uh, I didn't know. I was doing it for survival, and it was really a blast. I don't know if my family would say it was a blast, uh, but we kind of, how everybody dug into their own space during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I kind of, for me, I was I kind of pretended it was 1950 and we were putting on a local TV show, and it was it. I didn't do that with any thought about the film. That was those were separate things,
Okay.
But what it clearly did do was uh, our band coalesced,
Yeah.
I mean, at least the boys, not my band's always been tight, but the boys became more comfortable as performers and singers, uh, and I think without that, the film Mike made wouldn't be as compelling, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, you've lived a very interesting life, and I agree with Mike that it's like, why haven't you hit that superstardom? And I don't know if it's the music business, timing. I had a discussion not too long ago about Bob Dylan, which you are compared to that. If he came 5 or 10 years later, would he be so iconic, with his music? So I don't know if it's a combination of those things. But the great thing about like the internet and the explosion of social media is more and more people have discovered you. And I think that's the great thing about YouTube as well. Um, so I'm going to preface this question with this, Ike. I am originally from Chicago. I was born in Arlington Heights.
All right.
Know where Libertyville is, have driven through Libertyville. And how much of being from the Midwest, and I try to explain people about Illinois, it's like Illinois, except for Chicago, is very, very conservative and very Midwestern. But we always think that it's Chicago all throughout the state, and it just isn't. How much of an influence of being, in Libertyville and being from Illinois, is in your music?
Well, I mean, everybody's experience colors their music. I consider myself physically in Libertyville, but I am a citizen of the planet. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I've worked I was a doorman for 13 years on Chicago and Rush,
Yeah.
traveled a lot. But the things that interest me uh, are, the way real people live, whether urban, suburban, rural.
Right.
It's about you know, human struggles and successes, and so, but when I talk to everybody seems to think, that I have this Midwestern perspective, which I'm sure I do. The film I love because it's so Rust Belt Midwest.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a LA, New York vibe, and I think I don't know if it mythologizes what we've done and where we play, but that's really those, I play at the Brass Rail in Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Yeah.
I play in Youngstown, Ohio. I play in Pittsburgh at the John Kohler Slovak Society. So uh, to answer your question, yes, I'm heavily influenced by uh, the community I live in, but it's based on my warped perception of that place. It's not necessarily what you might see when you're rolling through there.
Right. Fair enough. Now, you and Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine, you guys grew up together, right? Went to high school
Kind of,
together?
kind
Yeah.
of. I'm older than Tom. He and my wife were classmates. Tom and I became very close in the past 25 years, but we were not close in high school.
Oh, okay.
He was a thespian and I was a greaser.
Wow. How a very nice outsider's reference there.
I'm so old that I knew Greaser before the movie came out. Okay.
Right. That's funny. Um, Very funny. So, what got you into music, Ike? I mean,
You know, I heard, I'm the youngest of four kids. The first song I ever really remember hearing was Ballad of a Thin Man when my brother got the record one Christmas.
wow.
The scary chords. Uh, pierced me to my soul. My neighbor in Libertyville designed the album cover for the Clash's "Give 'Em Enough Rope," and his mother brought the vinyl to my mother and said, "Look what my son drew." And I looked at this album like, "What in the fuck is this?" And I put it on, and it took me over to London and to that, and you know, and I was more interested in the characters in these songs uh, and in films than actually creating them. But then as time went on, I learned a couple chords, and I found that it was cathartic and thrilling to, uh, have something
Right.
spit out of your head. I mean, let's face it, if you write songs, you control that world.
Yeah.
Nobody tells you what to do. It's a cathartic, freeing thing to be able to make things up.
Well, I mean, the elder Graham Greene said it best that writing is a form of therapy, you know. Um, that's interesting. I read in doing more research and, like I said, having fun rediscovering your music, I read something online that somebody compared you to the Midwestern version of The Clash, which I thought was really interesting. Um, so great
I
compliment.
don't know, I mean, I think musically, my my I don't know if that was disturbing or not, but
No, no.
certainly it was certainly I made it distracting for everybody. Uh, I musically our band is nimble in that way. I mean,
Right.
we can sound like the Butterfield Blues Band. We have, you know, certain, dance hall vibes, punk, folk,
Right.
so yeah, I mean, I play with you
Sorry
know,
about that. We're not taking calls in this interview.
thank God.
Uh,
But yeah, I mean, I don't, that's a great comparison. You know, I, it's probably overstates our greatness, but
I just, like I said, I love the compliment. I mean, more than anything else. But anyway, all right, back to you, Mike. So, what's the hardest part about doing a music documentary?
I mean, for us, it was honestly leaving stuff out, right? So if you know Ike's music, he's got a song called "The Ballad of the Choir Boy Bank
Yeah,
Robber," and it's a great song. And we had a really, really good explanation of the song, cut of the song, everything, and we had to remove it from the film. We were too long, and so the advantage of having working with a body of work like Ike's is it's deep, right? He's got a lot of songs. And we were proud that we snuck six portions of at least 61 songs into the film,
yeah,
right? And we knew we wanted to have these kind of tent pole songs. And like Put a Little Love in It is a great song, but you learn about the origin of the song. You
right.
learn that Ike worked as a gravedigger. You learned where he grew up. You learn a lot about him, right? So that was a great song, it was an important song to include in it. Took it lying down. I learned that he worked at a hotel. I
Yeah,
learned that he happened to have a pretty famous guest, and he had a lot of famous guests, but he had a really famous guest we wrote a song about. I learned
yeah.
about his relationship with his wife. He likes to try to impress his wife. He's always trying to impress Kara, and she's calling him out all the time. So, like these songs allowed us to really kind of build character and story. And so we knew we wanted to tent pole in these longer songs, right? Trick of the Light, obviously at the end with the boys, huge. Born on Fire, to me, that's one of the um a song that should be in movies, right? I mean, that song should be in.
It is funny you say that because I've been a writer for 24 years or 25 years. Got a book that, I always listen. I always have a soundtrack in my head to stories. And I was thinking about, my God, that would be a perfect song for the ending of this coming of age story that I've been writing for 5 years, type thing. And it was kind of like a light in my head. And I could imagine it as a movie, like people traveling and listening to music. It's like it's a very cinematic song.
Absolutely. It's in the Chris Farley documentary. I Am Chris
Yeah.
Farley, along with interviews for Mike. And so, he obviously had a relationship and has known Chris, and we touch on that in our film too. But I'm to your point, I'm talking about, narrative film,
Yeah.
that song. And there's a lot of his songs that should be. And so, again, that one, you learn a lot. You learn a lot that it's a pretty close personal one between him and his son Kevin.
Right.
Yet it's so relatable in so many situations. And I always love when he introduces that live in the way he does in the film. It's kind of like he talks about anybody who's been put down and goes on a list of people, from
Yeah.
coaches to bosses to, and it is very relatable on that front. So yeah, that's why I think, and O'Brien was huge in helping us do this in a way that was not, we didn't want to just do a linear, like, here's the guy and here's how he came to be. We wanted to make it more really about his art and his
Right.
voice. And I think we've done that. And, I could sit here and try and take credit for it, but it all gets down to source material, right? That's why I wanted to do this film.
Yeah.
I knew how good, frankly, the source material was. And if you have
Right.
good source material, it's hard to mess it up.
I love the song taking it lying down. I love the story behind it. We don't want to completely spoil who the famous guest is, but I will at least say this, that I think it kind of takes life onto its own, and maybe more of a politically charged song about that famous guest. I know when you originally wrote it, you maybe didn't see it that way, but my question is, could it be considered kind of a political song now?
It was absolutely a political song when I wrote it.
Okay. All right.
I mean, you know, I don't think it's any, it's not a secret. I checked Donald Trump into the Park Hyatt and he stiffed me, that's all there is to it. And people accuse me of stealing something from him. And maybe I did, maybe I didn't.
Or you got what was owed to you. There's many ways to look at it. Yeah, I did. That was one of my favorite parts about the film, is that story. And I'm like, well, that sounds about right when it comes to Donald Trump. But yeah, thank you. I can definitely see it as a political song. All right. Irish on both sides of my family. So heavily influenced kind of by that, and with you being Irish and stuff, it's a very Irish thing to incorporate family into the music, into your passions and everything. What I'm assuming that your kids have been able to play music probably since they could first hold a guitar. Is that right?
That is not true.
Oh, really? Okay.
We never, they never, I never pushed it, never even considered it until they were older. I mean, actually, my oldest son, I didn't even know anything about what he was doing. I mean, we're close, but all of a sudden when he was, 20 years old, he had all these songs he had written. The other guys started singing with me in the past few years. Now they're all right. My oldest son, Shane, has a record coming out. He's got an incredible record coming out.
Oh, fantastic.
The other two guys are starting to write and play, but they all can sing. I think the only thing that we might have provided them was the lack of inhibition, which is a huge thing. I used to have to drink a half a bottle of whiskey before I could perform in front of anybody, and they're comfortable in their own skin, and it's I guess that's something that maybe because there were so many artists and musicians hanging around
Right.
our house, they saw that, but that was their first skill set, not to be self-aware.
When did that all come about? Your son's playing with you and having the family band.
The past 4 years.
Okay.
I mean,
Um,
I think
I-
the first performance was 2019, the very end. It's documented in the film
right.
at the First Avenue in Minneapolis. And then COVID hit, we did the live streams. Then we've been on tour and they've done, I don't know, 50, 60 shows with me now.
Do you kind of consider that coming full circle with your career, that you have your sons kind of involved and you guys are doing music together?
I don't know about full circle, but it's a either a rebirth or a redefinition of what I'm doing. For me, it just gives me another tool to write with and to perform with. I'm like, wow, I got these guys. There's a genetic connection to
Right.
all vocalists, and it's it can be powerful to harmonize and sing in unison with people that are genetically connected, and it's a fucking blast too. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I go out and travel with my best friends in my band, and now my young adult children, and it's a chaotic, hilarious, uh, powerful live uh, circus.
Um, your first album, Salesman and Racist, great title. I got introduced to that album when I was actually in the Army by a guy who went to high school with my sister in Chicago, believe it or not. And we were talking about music one day. We were both stationed at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And believe me, that's the biggest oxymoron in the world when it comes to the name. But we were talking about Midwestern music. And he's like, back in very early 2000s, when that album had come out, burns a CD for me and gives me that album. It's like, yeah, it's from Libertyville, with Tom Morello and everything. And that, I wish I still had that burned CD. It was like, wow, that's like awesome. I love the name, and it's very Midwestern. But my kind of question is, from that album to how you do music now, has much changed, or is it just how you do it, or is it really just about the different stories that you incorporate into your music?
That this whole process is unfortunately made me, think about things like that. I have a ramshackle way of working. I mean, if my band is around and available, we'll go into the studio and play them together. If they're not, I'll start a song with the Casio drum beat. I mean,
Right.
The way I write is never changed. And it's not formulatic either. I'll do it anywhere, any way I can. The way we record is based upon necessity. Is
Right.
there money for these recordings? Are these going to be songs that I produce? Am I going to lean on my buddy Ed Tinley to help me? Phil Carnat's my bandmate. Is the band available? Are we going to go for a live sound? Or are these going to be like a drum beat oriented songs? So, it's just, I always considered recording, capturing that idea for a song in the space you're in your life.
Yeah.
I got to go to that studio's available. This song's ready. That's where it's going to happen.
Right. I want to come back to you, Mike, and talking about making, again, a music documentary. Did the film festival circuit, won a lot of awards and got a lot of, critical praise for it. It's coming out, but my question is, I know more and more people have discovered Ike at this point, having watched the film. You feel like that's probably their film festival awards are great, get you notoriety and everything, but do you feel like more and more people discovering Ike Reilly is a bigger compliment?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the highest praise that I've gotten from a lot of people saying the film, first of all, they love the film, they love the story, they love all of it, but the music sticks with them, right? It's
Yeah.
like I kind of said, it sticks with them. And so, yeah, they agree. It's like they watch the film, they're like, this guy should be huge. You're right. This guy is great.
Right.
This music's incredible, and it sticks with them. So, I mean, yeah, and that's high praise, right? I mean, that is high praise.
Yeah. You talk about you had to cut this down. You had so much.
Yeah.
I feel like there's enough for part 2 of this story.
Marcus, I've got a couple ideas here. So in my dreams,
You've really screwed yourself, Marcus. You're going to hear this pitch now.
So I'm glad you asked, Marcus, and thank you so much. I hope you own a network. So after the film comes out and we blow up there, the algorithm's going to demand more Ike Reilly immediately. We take the family quarantine hour and I break that out into a series. And so we've got so many of those things. We infuse those with interviews. We've got the quarantine series hour. While that's airing, we're out on the road with Ike and the whole band and the family. We're touring the country. maybe meeting a few famous friends along the way. And then that's the season that'll come out. That's 3. And then by the time 3 comes out, we've gone a few other places, including internationally. That's season 4.
There you go. So if you can't do shameless promotion on our and during our interviews, there's no point doing interviews.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, screw any more versions of The Bachelor. Let's do the Ike Reilly show. That's what I say.
America needs it. America needs it now.
I agree. Ike, are you more comfortable doing like clubs, or do you feel like it would be no different with your music if you were playing a huge theater of 20,000 people, that kind of thing?
I think that's got to be different. I've never done it. I'm comfortable playing my music anywhere. I think that music should be in smaller venues,
Right.
but we have we can play anywhere,
Yeah.
I just, you've seen, take your favorite artist, do you want to see him in front of 20,000 people, or do you want to see them in front of 400, or 1,200?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, but I'm willing to fail in front of 20,000 if I get the chance. Yeah, sure.
I'm a working class schmo, so I'll take the cheaper ticket at the club with beer, a good bar tab, more than anything else.
I love clubs. I
Yeah.
love bars. Yeah. I mean,
I love you talking about the club where Prince played in Detroit. One of our staff is the biggest Prince fan in the world. Like, I know more about Prince because of him.
well,
So
he's from I think you mean Minneapolis, though.
yeah. Anyway, that was just one of those things that I kind of threw out when I was talking about getting to do this interview. And he's like, "What? He played where Prince?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we'll talk more about that later." But anyway,
I play there 20 years in a row on Thanksgiving Eve. It's called the First Avenue, and it's a brilliant club. It used to be the Bus Depot in Minneapolis. It's an incredible venue.
yeah. All right, I got to wind it down a little bit because we're going to run out of time. So let me ask this real quick. Your last album, Mike, Because the Angels, do you have another one coming out? And I love Because of the Angels, great album. Trigger the Light's a fantastic song. But do you have another project coming out?
We just released a single, I think 2 weeks ago, called "It's Hard to Leave You for the Ocean."
Okay.
We're going to start releasing these songs every couple of weeks as singles. And then at the end of the year, a full album will be released.
All right. Fantastic. And Mike, what's next? We know what you want to do, but what's next with the film?
With the film, well, pre-orders available now on Apple TV Plus, and then it's everywhere on Tuesday, August 27th. So, and that's going to be really on all TVOD platforms: Amazon Prime, Apple TV Plus, YouTube, Fandango, and then Comcast, Infinity, Fios. Any cable provider, you can rent or buy it on those too. So, really, just pushing folks out and spreading the good word on the film.
So I got one final question. It's our nerdy question that we ask everybody we interview, as you can tell. So here it is. Time to get your nerd on. If you could have a superpower or a weapon of choice from the nerd universe, like a lightsaber or something, to fight the forces of evil, what would you choose? And I'm going to start with you, Mike.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, I think invisibility would be nice, right? You could just, you're invisible. You can do whatever you want. So I'm going to go with invisibility.
All right, that's always a great one. I like that as a filmmaker, just the amount of information you can get.
Yeah.
Ike, how about you?
I think if you ask somebody what weapon they choose to fight the forces of evil, and they say invisibility, that is a telltale sign for cowardice, I think.
Oh, ouch. Look at this.
So I too choose invisibility.
I had to ruffle a few feathers here in this interview. I love it.
I'm I'm going with Mike, you know, two invisible dudes, we could, you know, run away together.
Well, if you ever want to get into the superhero genre, there you go. You just set up a premise.
Is that like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing you did there? Where you are you a D&D guy?
I am actually. Grew up.
How come I knew this? You know, I will tell you this, I've never played D&D, but I've been able to sit in on a game with uh Morello and his Hollywood friends who play it. And you know, if I ever get caught playing it, geez, don't tell anybody.
I don't know. You might like it. It's interesting.
That's what Tom said, but
Yeah. Well, the problem with D&D though, real quick, is you know, you kind of come of age in the 80s when you had all the satanic scare about it and all the propaganda. And it's like, no, it's just imaginary role play in a board game. That's all it is. But nowadays it's popular.
yeah, huge.
That's the other. If we had more time now, I want to know more about Tom Morello playing D&D. But if we get a chance to interview him on Thursday, I'm going to have to pop that question. All right. I'm getting.
Don't ask it first.
No.
Talk about the movie first. All right.
No, we got to promote this movie. I want more.
I will tell you this. I picked him up one night in Lake Geneva where he was in the house of the guy that created Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know the guy's name.
That's funny.
And he goes, come on in. He goes, come on in. And I walked in this little house in Lake Geneva, and Vince Vaughn and Tom, and I don't know the guy's name, Joe Manganiello. Is
Yeah.
that his name?
Yeah.
All these other guys were sitting in this little dive in Lake Geneva playing D&D. And then Tom looked at me and he goes, we going to stay any longer? And I gave him the let's go. And we drove back to Libertyville. But
Wow. All right. For our nerd fans out there, a little D&D story. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I got to cut you guys loose so you can do more press. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for interviewing with us. I absolutely love the film and rediscovering your music. And I cannot wait for your next album, Mike. So
thanks a lot, man. Be good.